Good morning and welcome to Malaysian News. I'm Nur Ili Kaisa and today we bring you a special report titled The Silent Crisis in Malaysia. Malaysia is a country known for its rich cultural diversity, strong economic and strategic location in Southeast Asia. The country is divided into two main regions, Peninsular Malaysia and East Malaysia, located on the island of Borneo. It is well known for its modern cities, natural resources, and multicultural society made up of Malays, Chinese, Indians, and indigenous communities. However, behind its development and progress, many Malaysians are facing growing economic challenges. Today, we will uncover one of the hidden issues affecting the nation: inflation. Hyperinflation is an extreme and uncontrollable rise in prices, where money quickly loses its value and daily life become more expensive. Although Malaysia is now experiencing hyperinflation, inflation has become a serious concern. One major factor was the introduction of the Goods and Services Tax, or GST, in 2015, which caused the prices of many goods and services to increase. As a result, many Malaysians face a higher cost of living and become more careful with their spending. At the same time, the value of the Malaysian ringgit weakened against foreign currencies. This made imported products and raw materials more expensive, increasing inflation even further. In addition, the reduction of fuel subsidies caused petrol and diesel prices to rise, which increased transportation and delivery costs. This also affected food prices and the cost of daily necessities. These rising expenses have created financial pressure on households, especially for low-income families. This shows how inflation has become one of the silent crises in Malaysia. Next, I will be reporting on imported inflation in Malaysia. Imported inflation happens when the Malaysian ringgit weakens, making imported goods such as food, fuel, and raw materials more expensive. This situation became more serious due to global events like the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russo-Ukrainian war, which disrupted supply chains and raised international prices. As a result, Malaysians have experienced higher living costs, especially for food and transportation.
Malaysia continues to face the impact of cost-push inflation, where rising production costs drive prices higher across the country. In 2017, fuel price adjustments led to increased transportation expenses, affecting goods nationwide. Between 2021 and 2023, global supply chain disruptions pushed manufacturing costs up, while food staples such as chicken, vegetables, and cooking oil recorded sharp price hikes. Analysts warn that these pressures are not just numbers on paper. They directly burden households, showing how external shocks and domestic costs combine to raise the overall price level in Malaysia.
So now we will look about the common types of inflation in Malaysia, which is the demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation happens when the demand for goods and services increases faster than the available supply. When consumers, business and the government spend more money, producers may struggle to meet the growing demand. If left unmanaged, demand pull inflation can reduce purchasing power and increase the cost of living for households.
And tonight, we take a deep dive into the number that defines our purchasing power. Looking at the data from the Department of Statistics Malaysia, as visualized in the chart, we break down the four defining eras of Malaysians' 10 years inflation story. Our story begins in 2016, driven by a steep recovery in global crude oil prices. Monthly year-on-year inflation surged past the 4% mark, hitting households directly at the petrol pumps. But what goes up must come down. By the mid-2018 and into early 2019, a historical political transition ushered in a temporary tax holiday. The zero rating of the GST sent retail prices plummeting, dragging inflation down close to zero, with the nation even dipping its toes into brief periods of deflation. Then came 2020 and the world ground to the halt. The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic triggered unprecedented lockdowns, with domestic mobility crushed global oil prices collapsing into negative territory and electricity discount rolled out nationwide. Malaysia entered a prolonged deflationary valley at its lowest point. Consumer prices contracted by nearly 2.9% year-on-year, marking the deepest economic freeze of the decades. But as the lockdown lifted, the economy rose back up. By mid-2021, a combination of low base effect and immediate supply chain bottlenecks sent inflation screaming back over 4%. That momentum carried right into 2022, fueled by post-pandemic consumer demand and geopolitical commodity shocks by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Food and energy prices kept inflation pinned near the 4% ceiling for months. At the far right edge of the chart, the story changed from volatility to stability throughout 2024 and 2025. Global supply chains finally healed and domestic prices control successfully cooled and market occurring inflation into the comfortable 1.5% to 2% corridor. As we move through the first half of 2026, we are noticing modest upstick to 1.9%. Economists note this is a calculated bump reflecting the government's targeted subsidy rationalizations in transport and utilities rather than a runway market. With Bank Negara keeping a firm hand on monetary policy, the consumers is clear where the wild swing of the last decade are behind us. Malaysia has entered an era of stability. First, let's talk about the main causes of inflation. Strong domestic demand and steady wage growth have created a surge in consumptions, while raising wages are positive metric for household income as seen on the chart above. They also increase the circulating money supply, which can driven prices upward when supply chains are constrained. Focusing on the chart above, between 2016 and 2019, the nation enjoyed steady, predictable growth with average monthly wages climbing towards the 3,200 ringgit mark, propelled by the strong GDP performance and initial minimum wage adjustment. Then came the pandemic shock of 2020. Several lockdowns measures caused wages to plummet back down to roughly 2,900 ringgit, but look at the roller coaster that followed. A massive post-pandemic surge in 2022 driven by the implementation of the 1,500 ringgit minimum wage was sharply corrected by global economic cooling and high inflation in 2023. It reveals a market highly vulnerable external economic shocks. Economists are looking ahead to a massive milestone bolstered by recent policy intervention, including the introduction of the progressive wage policy and the latest 1,700 ringgit minimum wage hike projection for 2026 shows average monthly wages hitting a historical peak of approximately 3,300 ringgit. Second, we are seeing the direct effects of monetary policy and fiscal deficit management. As the government navigates budget constraints, policy decisions regarding interest rates and spreading continue to play a pivotal role in either cooling or heating the economy. Finally, we cannot ignore the global footprint. External factors, particularly volatile prices for raw materials and energy, are being imported into our local markets. When the cost of global goods rises, we feel that pinch at the gas pump and the grocery store. The root cause stemmed from a major policy shift, the government's transition away from blanket full subsidies toward targeted model, specifically restructuring diesel and retargeting on 95 petrol, has placed immediate upward pressure on transport costs. For non-subsidized road user corporate logistic change, this means direct painful bumps at the pump. To put into perspective, market prices for unleaded run 95 are now hovering over 3 ringgit 70 cent per litre, as seen on the data. Hovering commercial diesel has risen significantly. Not only that, the highest prices that petrol has risen to was 4.5 cents. Lastly, while core food inflation technically remains moderate as seen above, the cumulative effect over time is heavily straining the daily disposable income of the B40 and M40 income brackets. Think about your local restaurant, cafe, or mama shops. Owners are forced to absorb higher utility rates, rising transport expenses, and minimum wage adjustment. Naturally, those overhead costs are passed down to retail food prices.
Today's economics news highlight Malaysia gross domestic product performance from 2016 to 2025. Based on the data, Malaysia GDP showed an overall upward trend throughout the period. However, in 2020, the economy experienced a contraction of 5.5% due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite this setback, Malaysia's economy recovered strongly, recording its highest growth rate of 8.9% in 2022. This recovery was mainly driven by the key sectors like services, manufacturing, and tourism. Overall, the positive GDP trend indicates that Malaysia's economy is becoming more stable and continues to grow.
I would like to present a news report on the measures taken to control inflation in Malaysia. To address the issue, the Malaysian government and Bank Negara Malaysia have implemented several strategies through monetary and fiscal policy. First, let us look at the monetary policy. One of the main tools used by Bank Negara Malaysia is increasing the overnight policy rate or OPR. When the OPR increases, commercial banks also raise their lending rates. As a result, borrowing money becomes more expensive for individual and business. People may delay purchasing houses, vehicle, or other expensive items, while business may reduce investment activities. In addition, higher interest rates encourage people to save more money instead of spending it. This reduces overall demand in the economy and helps slow down inflation. Another monetary policy measure is reducing the money supply. Bank Negara Malaysia can use various instruments to reduce the amount of money circulating in the economy. When consumers and business have less access to funds, spending decreases, demand falls, and business are less likely to raise prices. This helps maintain stable prices and prevent the economy from overheating. Now, let us discuss fiscal policy. One fiscal policy measure is reducing government expenditure. During period of high inflation, the government may reduce spending on certain projects, programs, or public services. This decreases the amount of money injected into the economy and lowers overall demand. As a result, inflationary pressure can be reduced. Another important measure is increasing taxes. Higher taxes reduce the disposable income in consumers and businesses. When spending decreases, demand for goods and services also falls. This limits the ability of business to continuously increase prices and helps maintaining the price stability. In conclusion, inflation remains one of the most important economic challenges facing Malaysia. With cooperation from the government, business and citizens, Malaysia can continue moving towards a more stable, resilient and prosperous future. Thank you.
As we move forward, let's look at the recommendation that could help Malaysians face the challenges of inflation more effectively. One important step is to strengthen financial awareness among citizens. The benefits of this measure is clear. When families know how to budget, save, and spend wisely, they are less vulnerable to sudden price increases. Financial literacy empowers households to take control of their finance, while at the same time creating a more stable economy with responsible spending habits. Another recommendation focuses on education and skills training. By improving skills, citizens can secure better jobs and higher incomes, making them more resilient against rising costs. A skilled workforce also boosts productivity and support Malaysia's long-term economic growth. In addition, special attention must be given to the B40 community, who are most affected by inflation. Targeted assistance such as subsidies, cash aid, and affordable transport helps reduce their burden and ensures fairness in society. Protecting the B40 group not only safeguards vulnerable families but also strengthens Malaysia's economic foundation by keeping demand steady and preventing inequality from widening.
Next, our recommendation to control inflation is the government can strengthen price control on essential goods. For example, in Malaysia, the government introduced price control measures during festive season and provide fuel subsidies to reduce the impact of rising living costs. Next, local production should be encouraged to reduce dependence on imported goods. Initiatives such as supporting local businesses and promoting buy Malaysian products can strengthen the domestic economy. Lastly, stable economic policies are important to maintain economic growth and control inflation. Through proper
Fiscal planning and economic support programs.
the government can help ensure long-term price stability. Thank you.